Hey guys, every now and then we find a job that fires us, and every now and then we got to do the right thing and fire the job. Please subscribe.
I resigned from my job several weeks ago. My last day was November 22nd, 2024. Here are three things that I didn't anticipate happening since then. Number one, I didn't think it was going to take me more than a week or two to get into gear, to get things rolling for myself. I am going to be very transparent and say some mornings I struggle because I know I need to stay on task in order to reach some of these goals that I set for myself. So I'm working through that. Number two, I didn't anticipate waking up in a panic thinking I needed to sign into work. That's happened a couple of times since my last day. And I had to quickly remind myself, you're okay. You're okay. You're not going back there. And number three, I didn't anticipate seeing the physiological changes in my body since then. So I work 9-hour days at that job, sedentary, mostly. And sometimes, as I mentioned in a previous video, I think I would find myself so stressed out that I would not eat what I was supposed to be eating, or not eat at all because my stomach was so upset. Or I would binge. I would eat just a lot of junk food, trying to take my mind off of what I was feeling emotionally and mentally. Now, I heard it said several times while I was at that job, it's not personal, it's professional. But the problem with that statement is it becomes personal when your surroundings start to affect you mentally, emotionally, and physiologically. So whether they think so or not, it was always personal for me because the life outside of my job was now being affected. Stay tuned for the next installment of Life After Resigning.
If you're working at a job that stresses you out and you have 15 minutes for your break, don't sit there and stew at your desk. Get up, put your shoes on, walk around the office, walk outside the building. If you're at home, go take a small walk. Sometimes you need that walk to clear your mind. And sometimes while you're on that walk, you need to try to make a decision on if this job is a place that you want to stay at long term.
Okay, part two of when I quit my very toxic job. So it was like the middle of the night and I knew I was going to resign the next day and I knew it was not going to go over well, mainly because of the size of my company and it was pretty small and my role. But I had to do it. So before I could even try to go to sleep, I went ahead and typed up my letter, had my husband look at it, and then tried to get some sleep. Then when I woke up, I took my kiddos to school and I called two key people who I worked with, who I wanted them to know and hear from me in my words what was going on. And they weren't really that surprised, honestly. But I just wanted it to come from me and be in my words because my boss was a master manipulator. So then I reached out to my boss and said that I needed to meet with her and I wanted it to be not at our, where we work, because if there was a scene, I just didn't want my staff to be, I don't know, in the crossfire of that. And so we agreed that we would meet at a coffee shop. And I was like, oh Lord, this is going to be really interesting. And I still was going to go to my kiddos' holiday parties and I was going to meet with her on my way to work after that. You guys, I printed out my letter because I wanted her to have it and it to be in writing. I was like shaking and crying the entire way to go have coffee with her because I just didn't know what the response would be. And
I know a lot of people through the years don't even give that 2-week notice, don't even write a letter of resignation. They just quit. It's because of the anxiety that comes from just it. For some reason, it's like, it's no fun to have to quit a job. There's nothing fun about it. A lot of times you would think, hey, I can't wait to give this boss a piece of my mind. But for a lot of people, at least myself, I hate when I have to quit or resign a job.
I had multiple people tell me if it is anger, if it is not okay, then you retract giving any type of notice and you be done right then and there. And I didn't want to do that because I knew that would affect the company and my staff who I loved. So I didn't know what to expect. Okay, so I get there and wait and wait and wait, and she was late. And finally she comes in. And so I just told her, I said, I'm giving you my resignation. And she started laughing hysterically, like manically. Like it was uncomfortable and long. It felt like an eternity. It probably wasn't. And said, I knew it. I totally knew it. And she did not, by the way. And yeah, that's what happened. And honestly, she made my last days there horrible, but I stuck it out. And now I'm on the other side, and I have started my virtual assistant business, and I work for myself. And I'm really proud of myself for getting out of that situation and
believing in herself. Good for her. You know, sometimes you have those bosses that are the type that'll laugh maniacally when you do try to resign. So I could definitely see how she dreaded that situation, but good for her. Did you guys hear that her boss came in late? That shows you how much your boss thinks of you. If you were to arrive late for something for your boss, you'd probably get chewed out.
So y'all, I quit my job today and without 2 weeks notice. To anyone that's considering leaving their job without notice, or even if you are going to give notice, but this is more so for the people that's not going to give notice, do not tell anybody. When I say nobody, I mean nobody.
Why?
Not your work wife, not your work husband, not your work bestie, not the supervisor that you think you cool with and y'all be kikiing over lunch. Don't tell anybody anything. One, you don't want to ruin the element of surprise. And two, you don't want to get into a situation where they've heard that you're leaving and now they're trying to fire you before you can quit. As a matter of fact, don't even open your mouth and tell nobody you're looking for another job. You can vent, but don't tell nobody you about to find a new job, you looking for a new job. Do like I did and make sure you use up all your sick leave, bitch. Okay? And y'all can go ahead and pay me out vacation. Okay? When I say they did not even see this shit coming, baby, it was giving Ray Charles to my bullshit. Do you hear me? So yeah, play it low key. Don't let anybody know what you got up your sleeve. And on your quitting day, just walk the.
So I'm a recruiter, and sometimes I speak to teachers that are actually on their vacation or they're on medical leave and they're about to go back to work in the upcoming weeks, and they've decided, I don't want to go back to work there. Sometimes jobs are really toxic places to work, no doubt about it.
But I just quit my job today. Yes, I just quit my job. Oh my God, I'm a full-time lash tech now. I just want to say how liberating it feels to quit a corporate job. And I don't know who I'm reaching out to or who I'm targeting, but like, just to quit a job in general is a lot, but to quit a job that's like a job that feels that they own you and that you can't do better than them and that you should feel lucky that you work there, and you're like, bitch, I'm out and I don't need you. And I've got.
See how she's saying, I don't need you, but she's going to be a nail tech, I believe she said, or a lash tech. It's good to have something that you can jump to. Unless you have a nugget of money saved up, it might not be the smartest thing to resign until you have a job to jump to. Let me know your thoughts down below. And yes, I know if the job's making you pull your hair out, sometimes you just have to quit.
I've gotten another opportunity on top of that. Y'all, I was about to lose my shit when I turned in my resignation letter today, and I just I feel so good. And I'm the type of person who's like, I'd rather them fire me than me quit, because I'm so not confrontational and I don't want to ever be the problem. I stood up for myself. I decided to choose me. I decided to choose my happiness over a company's and their success, and decided to do what was best for me. And what was best for me was to leave that toxic work environment.
And that might be one of those things that you're contemplating. If you're brave enough to mention it down in the comments. You might motivate another person to do the same thing. Sometimes people are stuck at jobs, and just like she said, that's the way I've always been. I don't like to quit jobs, even if I can't stand it. There's just really something uncomfortable about that. That's why I think a certain percentage of people just never show up again.
You're looking at a girl that just quit her job. Resigned. I'm out of there. Next week is my last week at this job. Almost 3 years later, I'm out. I will go more into detail in a live or in another video, but just know God has the final say. I'm headed to a new opportunity, which is the job that I wanted, making the money that I needed. Not just that I wanted, the money that I needed. And he took all of my requests and honored them. God is faithful. And if I had to go through the last few months all over again to get to this place, I would.
So I'm noticing a pattern here. Ladies, if one of your girlfriends at work says, "Hey, I'm up and out of here and I'm quitting," that doesn't necessarily mean that you should jump off that bridge either, because a lot of times they're quiet about it till it's time to strike. And notice that a lot of them already have another job to jump to. So when your friend is quitting, she might have planned it out a little bit better. So try not to make emotional decisions. Try to really ponder the positives and negatives. And like I said, if you can have something else to jump to, that's the best way to do it. Okay, this one says, I've come so far quitting my extremely toxic job at Costco after over a decade of employment. This might describe you.
You know how women are. They're just too sensitive sometimes. You're too sensitive. Or that's just how people are. Naive to think that like I wasn't just a number and that I did matter. Like, you have no idea how bad I wanted to be able to go back to work. The embarrassment. I still have so much embarrassment. The crazy thing is, it's like, it's not only like employees that get bullied. You know, some of these bullies, you know, they bully the managers too. And I am different. I know I'm different. Such a fool that I gave so much of myself. Annoyed that I trusted my managers. Like, after that interaction with that corporate manager and talking to my GM, he like kept texting me and emailing me, and my self-confidence, I have none of that. You know how women.
Sometimes you work so long at a company and you resign, and then you're really proud of your resume because it says that you worked someplace for 10 years, right? Maybe you're in your 40s or 50s, so you really feel like you're a real professional. And here's the scary thing. I've been hearing a lot of things on YouTube mainly that people that have a bunch of experience aren't even getting opportunities. It's like they're keeping us middle-aged folks from gaining employment. Very freaky.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I am freaking out because today is the day that I am quitting my corporate job that I hate so much. So I'm meeting with my manager in about 1 hour to officially resign, and I'm super nervous, have a lot of anxiety about what exactly I'm gonna say. I've already written up my resignation letter that I'm gonna send immediately afterward, but I just know it's just gonna be very uncomfortable. But I will keep you all posted. So stay tuned for my next video. I'm going to actually share the conversation live so you can kind of see what that looks like. And I'll also post another video about how I feel afterward, because right now, ball of anxiety, my heart's racing, my hands are sweaty. I'm just super, super nervous, even though like I should be excited and happy that I'm quitting my job. Just a whole bunch of emotions that I'm feeling right now. But
Sounds to me like when we quit jobs, it's almost like quitting a relationship or asking a spouse for a divorce. There's a lot of emotions that we go through and a lot of fear and anxiety. You think it would be a happy day. And after you do resign and leave the building and it's accepted, you know, because sometimes the boss doesn't accept your resignation, but when it's accepted, you do feel like that sense of calm come over you.
I quit my toxic job with no backup plan. Let me take you through this. I've been at this job for the last 5 years, and there has been a lot of internal changes in the company. And over the last 2 years, I took on the job of 5 people down to just me. Now, over the past 9 months, my mental health has really taken a toll. We're talking debilitating migraines, anxiety, panic attacks, which brings us to now. My old boss is somebody who takes his problems out on everybody else, and I had just had my final straw with it. I left the office early, cried about it to my husband, and we both agreed that it was just time for me to go. Now, we need to be a 2-income household because we've been saving up to build our house. Without a backup plan, I went in the next day, I quit my job. You guys, I had never been so relieved in my entire life. The good Lord had other plans because that same afternoon I had an interview and they literally offered me a job the next day. Mindset right now is very much, if I have to be at work away from my daughter, it needs to be at a place that values their employees, and that there's absolutely no job worth my mental and physical health.
So sometimes you're in a situation where your spouse can kind of float the bills while you try to recoup your job. Here's the cool thing. It sounds to me like she got right back in to a job that employed her. So nice.
Y'all, I've never woken up like this, ever. I woke up like a kid on Christmas. And you know why? Because today is your girl's last day of a toxic job. Today is the day that the Lord has made. Sheridan will not be coming in no more. That's what's happening, and I'm so excited. Can I clock in early?
Sometimes you have that job you hate and you literally like to get there right when your shift starts. Sometimes people don't even want to get there 5 minutes early, which is really weird because I grew up at a time where you got to your job 15 minutes early. If you're a 15 minutes early person, let me know. If you're a heck no, I'm going to get there right when my shift starts, let us know as well.
I just sent my resignation letter for my very toxic job that has caused me nothing but pain, sadness, and a lot of tears. And I don't know what I'm doing next, but whatever it is that I end up doing, I just know that I'm choosing myself. And I think at the end of the day, that's the best thing that I can do for me. I'm finally free.
But it's kind of crazy how jobs can make us get. So here's the thing, you're in a spot where you really want to quit your job, especially with the new year right around the corner. You'd like to start fresh, but you want to do it strategically. So what's the best way to do it? To get your shoes, go on a walk, and make a plan. And the best time to do it is right now. Go get your shoes. Let's go for a walk.
Good morning, Venters. I was watching CNN. It was a CNN video, not the actual channel on TV. And Deborah Birx was on. I don't know if you guys remember Dr. Birx. The best way I can tell you something about her that would make you remember her is she was always the one that was doing press conferences with Dr. Fauci, and they would be talking about COVID when the pandemic was happening a couple years back. And she was the one that always wore scarves. Remember how she made scarves super popular? So today she's on, and here's a picture of her now. Is it just me, or is it maybe her hairstyle? But either way, I feel like it looks like she gained around 10 or 15 pounds in the face, almost to the point where she looks slightly like a different person, which is kind of strange. But either way, you'll notice she's still wearing a scarf. There's a senator named Chris Burchett, or I think his name is Chris, but his last name is definitely Burchett. And if you remember, I make fun of him because he's constantly talking about the aliens, and he's constantly saying gag nabbit or dag nabbit, right? And after a while, you start to realize that's an act, him saying those goofy words over and over each and every time you hear him talk. Well, with Dr. Burchett, the thing that bothers me is that she too has her own little gimmick. She doesn't say any weird words, but she wears those darn scarves. It could be 110 degrees in that studio, and she's still got that scarf on, right? Is it a fashion statement? Okay, well, if it's the end of the world with these pandemics and stuff, who cares about a fashion statement? So it's a little weird. And then another doctor that's constantly on the news is that Dr. Peter Hotez, I think is his name. And he's the guy that's constantly has glasses on and a bow tie. And so when you think of these three characters, you just can't help but think, this is theater. This is like a giant play, and we're in the audience watching this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that they're not saying important things, because they very much could all be saying super important things. But it's just weird when you see a theater character in their costume, right? For in their uniform, so to speak, it looks like it's a production. God, I'm telling you, this world we live in is a story. It's really, really interesting. So anyway, what did Dr. Deborah Birx talk about? Because I feel like it's important. She said right now we've been hearing a lot of cases of the animal flu, specifically the bird flu, this H5 virus, right? And the one thing they're worried about is it mutating. And apparently there was a guy back east. I say back east because I'm in Arizona. I don't remember if it was Louisiana or what. But I'm sure you guys heard about this. He was kind of an elderly man. He got sick. And I guess the disease had mutated in him because it got to his like upper respiratory tract where normally the H5 doesn't get up to. Now, when it gets into cows and when it gets into cats and various animals, it's been doing a lot of dangerous, it's been killing them off because apparently it's adapted to kind of do so to those particular animals. So here was her worry. She goes, imagine the workers that are dairy hands. So they're there dealing with the cows, and you've got all these other animals like the cats getting this bird flu adaptation, right? Adaptation. She goes, imagine a situation where all of a sudden the winter hits, because we're in the winter, and all of a sudden the H1 virus starts perking up. Because, every winter it seems like we start to get more and more colds and flus. She goes, all of a sudden you have these dairy hands, and all of a sudden they're in a situation where they're surrounded by H5 virus from the birds/animals, and then they all of a sudden bring in the H1 virus, which is the human version of the flu. It's funny because they're always trying to tell us that we're no different than the animals. We're a great ape. Well, how come our flu symptoms are so different? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Here's the point. She said that viruses and stuff have the ability to kind of commingle with one another. And where the H5 virus basically doesn't know how to get into our upper respiratory tract where it could really do us in, if it kind of mutates based off the H1 virus that we commingle with it by bringing in people that have the flu, because you know how guys are. They wipe their nose, they go into work sick, women do it too. And before you know it, you have this perfect petri dish or this perfect breeding ground where this H5 bird flu virus can actually mutate. And they were basically trying to bring up the idea that it's going to be 2020 all over again, except instead of COVID, it'll be this bird flu, human flu mutation. Here's the scary thing about what went down with COVID that kind of scares me, and I'm just using my fun, scary movie, end of the world movie type ideas that go through my goofy brain. We went through this COVID situation, and what it did was it made us all skeptical. We no longer want to be the guinea pig that tries out the up and coming new inoculations, right? We don't want your vaccine, so to speak. And now we got to the point where we're actually a little bit more afraid of the vaccine than the actual illness itself, right? But that's because we've all come to the realization that if you're relatively healthy, COVID is something that you're more than likely going to overcome. But the scary thing is when you get the country and maybe even the world against vaccines, just from the standpoint of what if we do have a good vaccine in the future for the bird flu, but imagine a world where absolutely no one wants to take it. Why? It's not that the vaccine is going to kill them, but even though it might, there's side effects and stuff. I'm not the most excited about any more vaccines. But I'm just saying, if you look at it from a book or a movie standpoint, you have this perfect scenario where you might have this medication that can prevent this illness that does us all in. And it sounds like this one's going to be a lot more deadlier than, COVID was. For all I know, this bird flu could be that dreaded disease X that we've been hearing about for the past year or two, right? And so all of a sudden, nobody wants to take the medication or the vaccine. And before you know it, half of us perish. God darn it, I don't know if that's going to happen in real life, but if that's a movie, I want to watch it. I love scary movies. Anyway, if you guys have any thoughts on this, let me know below. Also, I'd like to know if you guys think the same thing I do, that it seems awful funny that when doctors and experts come on TV to tell us something that we need to hear, why do they have to dress up? Why do they, Jesse, they're allowed to wear a suit and tie? That's not what I'm saying. Why do they have to wear their scarf? Why do they have to say dadgammit every third or fourth word? It really does make it look like they're playing the role of a character in a theatrical piece, doesn't it? It really does. So the CNN video had a lot of comments, and here's the interesting thing. When I'm watching a Fox News video, the comments are from a lot of conservative people. You can tell because you can almost imagine me saying half of the comments. On the CNN videos, it's the exact opposite. You can really kind of just tell that these people are people that watch CNN religiously. I used to love watching the Chris Cuomo show on CNN. Now I watch it on News Nation. I'm conservative, but I always liked watching all the different news stations and then coming up with my own ideas and thoughts. Some people that are conservative only want to watch Fox. Some people that are, maybe a little bit more blue only want to watch CNN. And then Fox talks trash and says CNN has no ratings. By the way, I have a war going on with Texas Longhorn fans. I mean, a straight up war. It's a fun war. Nobody's being mean or angry with each other, but they think I'm crazy because I'm like the only guy saying ASU's gonna win it all. And then they're like, hey, do you want to bet some money on it? And I'm like, I wouldn't trust a Longhorn fan. I'm gonna take my money to the casino where at least I'll know I get paid. They probably don't believe me though, because a couple of them wrote back comments like, nuh-uh, you are not, you're fibbing, you're chicken. But don't you agree with me? If you're gonna bet money, bet it at the casino where you know you'll get paid. Don't be betting hundreds of dollars with somebody across the country. And then if you lose, you're honorable and you pay, but if they lose, they just kind of ghost you. Don't do that crap. It's a lose-lose situation. But believe me, I wanted to. I wanted to bet 20 bucks or 100 bucks or something, but I was strong. At Anisha Wade says, she lost me, she being Dr. Deborah Birx, when she said she finds the American populace highly smart. And then she says, nope, I would challenge that. So remember, if you're watching Fox, this would be people saying, I highly doubt that people are going to be smart and not getting the vaccine for this in the future. But this is CNN. So what she's really saying is, even if there was a vaccine that could save us all the trouble of going through this next upcoming bird flu pandemic, people are too dumb to want to do it. But see, here's the problem with this statement. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, the next vaccine could be that lifesaver that everybody wants it to be so we can avoid these pandemic type situations, right? But the problem is, because we already went through this COVID thing and we found out that at each step of the way we were subtly lied to for our health and benefit, right? But when you're lied to, that breaks the trust. And do you guys remember at first it was like a 12-foot rule, and then it was a 6-foot rule, and then it was a 3-foot rule, and then it was, hey, you can't be in the company of somebody for 15 minutes in a row, otherwise your chance of contagion goes up. It seemed like there was a bunch of rules for every other day of the week, and people just got disillusioned by it. And by the way, it's no longer a red versus blue thing. If you were to go up to 100 Democrats, there's probably a good chance 30, 40, or 50 of them would say, yeah, I'm not interested in getting any more vaccinations. No, thank you. So I think just like that California vote on retail theft, I have a feeling a good 60 to 70% of us, regardless of party affiliation, don't really want to go through a repeat of what happened in 2020. I think what's foolish is just to say, yes, whatever you say, sir, here's my arm, inject me with your drug. I think in the future, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be first in line to take nothing. Let's see how everybody else handles the inoculation first, and maybe I'll be in the second group after they get the bugs out of it, so to speak, right? I'll tell you one thing I shouldn't do. You've seen me on 2 or 3 occasions get really close to like pigeons that looked kind of sickly. Like maybe in the future, if I see a pigeon that looks on it's like it's in its last hour of life, maybe I'll start giving it a little, 12 foot of space. Jay Jones, 7891 says, I am a public health nurse, and it is scary that we haven't learned anything from COVID when it comes to public health. So once again, if this was a Fox station, you would say, yeah, I've learned I'm not going to run to get that vaccine in my arm. I know what can happen, and I'm not pushing you one way or another. Like I said, I took the vaccine in a couple boosters. I thought it was the right move to make because I was living with my 96-year-old grandma. But again, even before that, I was always under the assumption that, hey, vaccines are a good thing. And predominantly speaking, they probably still are. But when it comes to doing an experimental anything, I just don't want to be first in line anymore. When she says we haven't learned anything from COVID when it comes to public health, I think some people learned that, just like me, they don't want to be the first guinea pig. I'd rather wait until it's a little bit safer. Now, what's that going to mean if this situation ever does happen? It means some people are going to live to regret that decision. But I think we should still respect that decision. And looking back the first go round, I was under the impression that, hey, this thing's got a 94-95% success rate. Everybody should get it. But now I know the truth, that it didn't prevent nothing. People could still get it, right? You could still get a bad form of the illness despite having the injection. And then on top of that, people had allergic or bad reactions to the injection itself. So what did you learn from it? I'd be willing to bet some of us learned some things that were positive, and I'd also be willing to bet some of us learned some negatives. So again, if you make one decision one way or another about future pandemics and dagnamit and inoculations, do what you got to do. Make the best decision for you and your family. I'm going to respect that. At Sectional Sofa says, head in the sand. Describes the 2020 response to COVID. Here we go again. Again, I don't know where these people are coming from, but I assume that there's multiple ways you could take that. Here's one thing that Dr. Burke said that she was a little worried about. She was a little worried how the CDC is saying right now that it's low risk. And then she looked into the camera and she said, don't you remember last go round? The CDC said this was relatively low risk. And what ended up happening with that? Well, obviously, hindsight is 2020. And we all know now that what happened with that is a lot of people did end up getting, the disease. But at the same time, what are you saying? Are you saying that we shouldn't listen to the CDC now? Because in the past, you were always telling us to listen to the CDC. So it sounds to me like they sure do make it really challenging for us as a people to make a good decision. That's at Cost of Doing Business says, oh lady, we're not doing this again. And therein lies the scary movie aspect. Imagine a world where we actually need people to get vaccinated to save the world, to save the planet. Now you've got a good 40-50% of the people that are just like, oh hell no, we're not doing this again. This is all theater. I even said earlier today, these people look like they're dressed up in a theater production, right? People are going to actually listen to my words and say, yeah, you're exactly right. This is theater. And I'm not trying to spread that rumor. I'm just trying to say that's how I interpret things, right? You don't have to interpret that same way at all. But we're going to have a good percentage of people that aren't going to take anything. And that's going to lead to a bigger, more dangerous spread where certain things can mutate. Jesse, you sound like one of those CNN broadcasters. Now, I know, I'm saying, if you look at it from a scary book or scary end of the world type movie, no matter how you look at it, because of COVID, we've got people nowadays that are more afraid of the vaccine or the future vaccines than they are of the actual disease. And this next disease, from what I understand, could just be incredibly a lot worse than COVID. I don't know if this is right or not. A lot of times I go based on little videos I see on YouTube, just like many of you do. But I think I heard somewhere that when they finally did the final tabulations that it ended up being less deadly than the common flu. Now, if I'm wrong, don't jump on me. That's just what I think I heard. Maybe you can let me know down in the comments if you guys heard that too. Did you end up hearing that when all was settled and done and the dust had settled, that the flu for the last couple years ended up being more deadly than COVID? Because if that's the case, I remember when COVID was coming out, a lot of people said, oh, it's like a cold or a flu, you'll get over it. And they were in trouble for that. They were censored for that. You got to remember, the worst thing that came out of COVID wasn't really the illness, the vaccine, or the doubt. It was kind of the censorship. Remember, we all started getting censored left and right just for having an opinion. SNJ Spring says, is she the same doctor that told everyone not to go to their families for Thanksgiving dinner in 2020, then was caught disregarding her own rules for Americans, and she ended up visiting her own family? You know, I think that was the case. If it wasn't her, I think it might have been Gavin Newsom with his LA Lakers basketball games, right? We have a lot of people that like to set the rules and the parameters and the laws for the rest of us. And then you end up finding out that they don't really observe those rules or laws themselves. So I don't 100% remember if Dr. Birx was guilty of that, but it does sound familiar. Again, venters, just for fun, if you can maybe Google that and find out and let us know down in the comments. So here's my next question for you. If we find out that that's not true, that it wasn't her, it was more along the lines of Gavin Newsom, then I'm not going to hold that against Dr. Birx. But if it was true, and Dr. Birx was out at Thanksgiving with her family, meanwhile telling everyone in America not to be with theirs, then all of a sudden you have to ask yourself, is this theater? Is this just a big joke? You know, that's what's crazy. I remember there would be people driving solo by themselves in their car, and they would have masks on. And once or twice I was even driving solo and had my mask on, but it was because, hey, I'm driving down the street, I'm just going to put it on real quick. But I think there were people that were just wearing it religiously no matter what time of day it was. And even now, when I go to the malls and stuff, I'll usually see one or two people that are wearing a mask. Now, here's the thing. If you're sick with a cold or flu or some sort of weird illness, and you're good enough and nice enough to wear a mask so you don't spread your germs, then hey, keep doing what you're doing. One of my coworkers bought me a book on conspiracy theories that ended up coming true. And I'm going to read a couple of those stories, and if I find a real good one, maybe I'll share it with you guys. If you guys are on any side of this argument, just know I go back and forth with all of this. The problem with COVID was, for the first 6 months to a year, it seemed like we were hearing about people dropping like flies, but at least within some of our own bubbles, we didn't know anybody that it affected. So it was one of those things where it was like, is this a psyop? Are people really getting sick of this or what? I don't know anyone that's been affected. But then as time progressed and we got into year 2, all of a sudden I started having some coworkers that would get sick with it. I started having coworkers that had family members that ended up perishing. And I ended up finding out that I had some kind of family members that ended up having family members of their own that got sick with the illness and passed away. So if you're one of those that are affected by COVID, whether it be through the illness, maybe you lost a family member, or through the vaccine, maybe you've got long COVID, not from the illness itself, but from the vaccines, I just want you to know I feel for you. My goal is not necessarily to make you feel one way or another. It's just these are the thoughts that kind of go through my mind. Why, if Senator Burchett, and I don't even know if he's a senator or a congressman, to be honest with you, the reason that is because I see him all the time, but the only thing I think of when I see him now is this UFO disclosure that frankly never happens. Is it just me, or do they get together every 5 or 6 months before Congress and just talk about how they can't talk about nothing? We'll talk about it in the skiff. Okay, we'll talk about it in the skiff. And then you think that they would ask questions for the people to watch that they could actually answer. But it's just like a bad replay of a bad sitcom that you never liked. And every time we see this guy, it's dag nabbit, dag nubbit. I mean, whatever the heck his saying is. You know, it's like, if this is really serious and you feel like people are hiding something, quit talking like you're some goober from Mayberry and talk like you're a U.S. congressman or a U.S. senator and let us know what the heck is going on. Anyway, this is what makes venting and going on walks so much fun. When you're not walking and you're working or you're taking care of your family or your household, you really should be focused on the task at hand. But when you're taking a walk, it's fun to think about goofy stuff. That's what makes the world go round. So have a beautiful day, take an extra credit walk. I'll see you tomorrow.